That's beautiful.
Thank you very much, tech team, and thank you all for your participation this morning. As I indicated in the emails, we are honored this morning to have as our Moment in History speaker, Dr. Evelyn Higginbotham, who is the Victor S. Thomas Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard University. Howard almost got in there. She has been a tenured faculty member at Harvard since 1993, and she chaired the Department of African and African American Studies from 2006 until 2013. She is the founder and coordinator of that department's Social Engagement Initiative, and that initiative combines rigorous academic work with on-the-ground experience. She became the national president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History in January 2016. She has also taught on the faculties of Dartmouth College, the University of Maryland, and the University of Pennsylvania. At the special invitation of Duke University, she taught at the Duke Law School in 2010 and 2011 as the inaugural John Hope Franklin Professor of American Legal History. Dr. Higginbotham earned her PhD from the University of Rochester in American History, her MA from Howard University, and her BA from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She probably doesn't remember it, but I met her while she was still a graduate student. She has thoroughly revised and rewritten the classic African American history survey From Slavery to Freedom, which was first published by John Hope Franklin in 1947. She is the co-author with the late John Hope Franklin of this book's 9th edition, which came out in 2010. She's a pioneering scholar in African American women's history, and she is the author of the prize-winning book, Righteous Discontent, The Women's Movement in the Black Baptist Church, 1880 to 1920. She is also co-editor with Henry Louis Gates, Jr. of the African American National Biography, now in its 2nd edition, 2011. She has many, many awards, including the 2014 National Humanities Medal from President Barack Obama. In 2015, she was named one of the top 25 women in higher education by Diverse magazine. She holds the honorary doctorate from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and Howard University. She was the John Hope Franklin Fellow at the National Humanities Center in Research Triangle Park for the academic year 2013 to 2014. She received the James W.C. Pennington Award from the University of Heidelberg in Germany for her scholarly contributions to African American religious history. In 2012, she received the Living Legacy Award from the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And in 2011, she received an honorary doctorate from Howard University. That's where Howard came in. The association awarded her the Carter G. Woodson Scholars Medallion in 2008. And in that same year, the National Urban League awarded her the Legend Award. Dr. Higginbotham is no stranger to Sarasota. Many of us remember fondly the visit that she made a few years ago. And she has other ties to Sarasota that she may choose to mention in her comments. Without further ado, I give you Dr. Evelyn Higginbotham.
Thank you so much. I am really honored to be here. I will say that the bio is a little bit outdated because I just finished being the first chair of the history department at Harvard and the first African-American to chair it. My term ended on June 30th. And the reason I always like to bring that up is because that is the department that conferred on Carter G. Woodson, the PhD in 1912. So I am just so happy to see all of you. I want to thank your president, Jim Stewart, for the invitation to speak to you. I am just really thankful for all that you do as a branch. In fact, you are the flagship branch. You are the largest of our now 48 branches. And so, of course, I am so very pleased to be here. And I'm also, it's just always good to be back in Sarasota. I was once, very briefly, Leon and I, my late husband, had a home there. So I still feel like I have ties, but I certainly have ties to many of you who are there. And it is just great to be back, even if virtually. I'm just looking forward to this pandemic to be over so that I can come down there during the winter season. Well, as you know, ASALH's theme for 2020 is African Americans and the vote. And it's a theme that we have in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, through which women gained the right to vote, and the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, through which Black men gained the right to vote. And the commemoration of these two anniversaries provides an opportunity for contemplating our long struggle for voting rights. Now, when Jim mentioned to me your practice of recognizing a moment in history, I thought, what a wonderful concept. What a wonderful opportunity for us to indulge our imaginations as we discuss the ASALH theme for 2020. In fact, with the gift of imagination, we can share this moment in history with one another. And we can also share it with persons who lived more than a century ago. So yes, folks, this is an act of imagination. An act of imagination because I am asking each of you to become a time traveler and to visualize in your mind's eye that you have been transported back to the early 20th century. And you've gone on a time machine that for no special reason has dropped all of us off in the year 1917. In 1917, ASALH was only 2 years old. The First World War was raging in Europe. The President of the United States is Woodrow Wilson, because we're back in 1917. And he's been making speeches about democracy and about American troops going to war to make the world safe for democracy. And in 1917, President Wilson is commander-in-chief of a racially segregated military that sends Black men overseas to fight and die amidst prejudice and bigotry in the armed forces itself. Woodrow Wilson's policies are not friendly to African Americans. After his inauguration in 1913, he called for and instituted the segregation of federal buildings and transportation in Washington, D.C. He ended merit-based civil service jobs such that the good jobs in the government became much more difficult for qualified African Americans to get. He lavished praise. He lavished praise on the racist film, Birth of a Nation, when it debuted in 1915. Wilson called the film history written in lightning as he showed it in the White House. And this film, as you know, glorified the Ku Klux Klan, glorified lynching and the denial of rights guaranteed by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. On all accounts, the time machine has not brought us as time travelers to a good moment in history. It is November 1917 to be exact. And we are comforted by one thing, and that is because we look and we can see the hard copy, because they didn't have, digital copies in those days, of the Crisis magazine of the NAACP, and The Crisis, whose editor is W.E.B. Du Bois. And so we are eager to see what message is coming across to Black people in 1917, because as you know, we are now right there with them. And we are reading what they are reading. But unlike them, we have one really important thing going for us. We know the past in a far deeper way. We have a lot of information on the centuries of enslavement and freedom in what is now the United States. We know, for example, that people of African descent lived in Florida in the early 1500s, well before the founding of Jamestown or the Mayflower's landing at Plymouth Rock. But we know even more. More than the history that preceded 1917, we know the future. We know the century that comes after 1917. Thus, we are aware of the long history of Black contributions to this nation. We can document and analyze the setbacks and the progress. We are able to recount stories of the struggle and perseverance that kept us going, kept us advancing in the worst of times. We have knowledge of our heritage, thanks to Carter G. Woodson and the Black History movement that he founded 105 years ago. We know it, that movement, today as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And we are still going strong. So with this knowledge, we turn to the Crisis magazine, and specifically its November 1917 issue. And as we're back there in 1917, and we look at the cover of the November 1917 issue of the Crisis, even we are in awe at what greets our eye on the cover page. It's titled, "The Oath of the Negro Voter," the Oath of the Negro Voter. We read it, we read the first two paragraphs aloud and together. So let me quote it for you. "As one of the earth's disowned, I swear to hold my ballot as the sacred pawn of liberty for all mankind and for my prisoned race. I will accept no price for my priceless vote, save alone just laws, honestly dealt without regard to color, wealth, or strength. I will make the first and foremost aim of my voting the enfranchisement of every citizen, male and female, and particularly the restoring of the stolen franchise to my people, by which continuing theft, the enemies of the Negro race sit in high places today and wretchedly misgovern." Now, perhaps after that powerful quote, you thought you were in the present, but you're not. You are still in 1917. So tell me what you think you'd like to say to the people of that time. This is a world perhaps of your parents as young people, perhaps of your grandparents when they were young. Surely we have something to say to these men and women. They don't know what we know, that the message in the Oath of the Negro Voter is just as crucial for us today in 2020 as it was for them. Those actual readers for whom the oath was written. In 1917, the great majority of African Americans lived in the South, and they were disfranchised. They couldn't vote because of voter suppression schemes such as the poll tax, literacy tests, 8-box plan, the white primary, and by the ever-present threat and actual acts of violence. So remember, we are in 1917. So women, regardless of race, had no right to vote in the overwhelming majority of states. The 19th Amendment would not be ratified until 1920, so that's 3 years later. But we want to assure Du Bois and his readers in 1917 that we time travelers, lived up to the oath of the Negro voter, that those voters never stopped fighting in the courts, never stopped marching in the streets in the decades to come. Black men and women continued to heed the words of the oath as they endeavored to restore the stolen franchise to Black people in the 1940s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, by risking their lives and employment simply to register to vote and to go to the polls to cast their ballots. We should promise our people who we are with in 1917 that we will make known and we will always remember the freedom fighters who were killed in the past for the simple act of trying to vote. For example, the Florida Black voting rights activist, Harry T. Moore, and his wife, Harriet Moore, she was a school teacher, died after their home was bombed on Christmas Day, 1951 in Mims, Florida. The great poet Langston Hughes wrote a poem honoring them as martyrs for freedom. The poem is titled The Ballad of Harry Moore. And let me share with you some of its verses. Florida means land of flowers. It was on Christmas night in the state named for the flowers. Men came bearing dynamite. Men came stealing through the orange groves bearing hate instead of love, while the star of Bethlehem was in the sky above. It could not be in Jesus' name, beneath the bedroom floor. On Christmas night, the killers hid the bomb for Harry Moore. It could not be in Jesus' name. The killers took his life, blew his home to pieces, and killed his faithful wife. It seems that I hear Harry Moore. From the earth, his voice cries, no bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. I will not stop, I will not stop, for freedom never dies. I will not stop, I will not stop, freedom never dies. In our time travel to November 1917, I want to highlight another section of the Oath of the Negro Voter. And it reads this way, I quote it, I hereby solemnly pledge myself to join with others like-minded to myself before each election, agreeing upon a list of suitable candidates who by their records or promises seem most likely to secure good government and justice to Black folk. And I will vote for these candidates regardless of their party, race, or sex. Now those last words, I will vote for the candidate regardless of party, race, or sex, reminds us of the importance of the long struggle for women's rights to vote. And Black women were among the earliest of women suffragists. We were there before the Civil War asking for the right to vote. By 1917, however, we find ourselves in the heyday of the women's suffrage movement. This was the high point. They were on the move. No wonder in the Oath of the Negro Voter, the words speak explicitly of women as voters and elected officials. For Black women, the pursuit of women's suffrage would not be separated from the voting rights of Black men. And this is important because throughout the decades, Black men were denied the vote. By the 1830s, most northern states, we're talking before the Civil War, most northern states, including those with sizable African populations, such as Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, had disfranchised Black voters in the very constitutional conventions that had extended and democratized the vote for white men. In New York, you could vote if you were Black and owned $250 worth of property, but that was a lot. And it was so unfair because Black men who were not property owners were now able to vote. African American men in the majority of the northern states, so we're talking about free men, were without the ability to vote. Do you know when they got to vote? It was not until the ratification of the 15th Amendment in 1870 during Reconstruction after the Civil War. Yet as early as the 1910s, even after the 15th Amendment had guaranteed our men the right to vote, Black men in the South were systematically losing that right. And they would remain disfranchised despite the 15th Amendment. And the great majority of our people lived in the South, so their political powerlessness was underscored by the passage of Jim Crow laws, segregation laws, inadequately funded schools, and sometimes no schools at all. They had no voice to fight the rampant mob violence and the lynching and the convict leasing, which imprisoned Black men, women, and even children. Thus, the women's suffrage campaign revealed a very different story for Blacks and whites. And this can be seen in the white women's state associations. The white women had state associations that comprised what was this large national body called the National Women's Suffrage Association. And it was predominantly white because there were Black women in some of the northern states' associations. But this was the organization, the Women's Suffrage Association, that brought together thousands and thousands of women suffragists in a massive March on Washington in 1913. And many of us have been seeing the documentaries about that massive march. It's photographic pageantry. This parade down Pennsylvania Avenue on March 3rd. It was all the more impressive because it occurred the day before the inauguration of Woodrow Wilson as the president. And the white women were jeered. I mean, they were supporters, but many of them on that march actually had to endure violent attacks from the onlooking crowd. And when you see the images and even the video footage of it, less well known until recent scholarship is the National Women's Suffrage Association's decision to have the Black women march separately at the rear. And even those Black women who were members of the Northern Integrated Suffrage Association, even they were required to move to the rear, march in the back. And there were different Black groups that did march. I mean, one certainly was the Deltas. Another was the Women's Convention of the National Baptist Convention. So you had these Black women who decided to march. Some decided they wouldn't march. But the photographs give the impression that this entire crusade was a white woman's effort. Black women were holding up the rear, but not all of them. The anti-lynching crusader, Ida B. Wells Barnett, she made her way into the photographs in 1913. In that very march, Wells Barnett was the leader in the Chicago Black Women's Alpha Suffrage Club. And I want to emphasize that because the women in Illinois actually gained the right to vote in 1913. So she was very active with the Black Women's Club, but she was also active in the Illinois Equal Suffrage Association, which was the predominantly white women's group. And Ida B. Wells Barnett learned about the decision of the president of her state to acquiesce to the racist policy of a segregated march. And she was not happy, but she was not deterred. So the Chicago Tribune reporter who covered the Women's March noted in the Tribune that Ida B. Wells Barnett appeared suddenly from the crowd. She'd been standing in the sidewalk. She wasn't marching in the rear, she was on the sidewalk. And as soon as the Illinois contingent walked forward, she jumped out of the sidewalk, she ran into the very front of the group, and the Tribune noted, and I quote it, "There was no question raised, and she finished the parade. Well, in 1917, because that's our year, the National Women's Suffrage Association began to become much more vigorous in its efforts to appease the white South in order to win Southern support in Congress for a federal amendment. They realized that they weren't going to do well if they went state by state, and so they decided that they needed a 19th Amendment, just like the 15th Amendment. So imagine that you're still there in 1917. You have just finished reading The Oath of the Negro Voter in the Crisis. And now you are reading the publication by Carrie Chapman Catt, this famous suffragist. She was the president of the National Women's Suffrage Association. And so you go to her book of essays, and that book of essays is titled Women's Suffrage by Constitutional Amendment. The book explains in unambiguous terms the racial exclusion inherent in the Southern strategy of the women's suffrage movement. Now, at first, when you get the book and you start reading, you really buy into her words. She talks about a nationwide injustice, that women don't have the right to vote. This is an injustice that undermines the ideals of human liberty that we profess as a people. And she speaks in these lofty words. And she's even quoted in The Crisis with those kind of statements, because The Crisis was pro-woman suffrage, as you could see in 1917, but even before 1917, in 1912, 1915. But her words sound so lofty until you get to chapter 6, where Carrie Chapman Catt sought to allay the racial fears of Southern congressmen who worried that including Black women in the enfranchisement of Southern women would undermine white supremacy. So in chapter 6 of the book, Carrie Chapman Catt tells the congressman not to worry as she presented population statistics. Now, somebody needs to mute.
I can get on Zoom at all. Either one. So, but I can hear. So I'm assuming
Here, somebody needs to mute.
That I can get on. Okay.
So let me start back with the chapter 6. So you've read the beginning of the book that talks about womanhood, and womanhood's denial of the right to vote is an act of national shame. The key is that we're just not included in womanhood. And so in chapter 6, she writes to these white congressmen who have to vote on putting the 19th Amendment out to the public for ratification. In chapter 6, she tells the white congressmen not to worry. And she does so by presenting statistics and charts that confirm the population of white women to Black women in the South. Now, she acknowledges that there is a Black majority in Mississippi and in South Carolina. And she also acknowledges that there's quite a high percentage of Blacks in Alabama. But she assures her readers that the state laws, those states have laws which already disfranchise Black men, so they will effectively disfranchise Black women. And she concludes in this way, and I'm quoting her: "Women's suffrage in the South would so vastly increase the white vote that it would guarantee white supremacy, even if otherwise it stood in danger of overthrow." Again, women's suffrage in the South would so vastly increase the white vote that it would guarantee white supremacy if it otherwise stood in danger of overthrow. With the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, Black women in the South, just as Black women in other parts of the nation, went to the polls. And news accounts note how the initial appearance of Black Southern women took the white poll monitors by surprise. Our sisters were soon turned away, disfranchised like the Black men of the South. For the great majority of African Americans in the Southern states, their pursuit of voting rights would continue through the decades. And we are reminded of courageous women like Fannie Lou Hamer in Sunflower County, Mississippi in the 1960s. Our trip to 1917 is fast coming to a close, and we must return to the present. We bring with us the oath of the Negro voter. We bring it because its message seems to haunt us. Despite the intervening century of progress, despite the two-term African-American president, Barack Hussein Obama, despite today's unprecedented Democratic ticket with a Black woman, Kamala Harris for vice president, despite the commemoration of the anniversaries of the 15th and 19th Amendments, we are left to ponder the strength and the enforcement of the 15th and 19th Amendments, given voter suppression in the very recent past, and given the 2013 Supreme Court decision, Shelby v. Holder, a decision that gutted key sections of the hard-won, blood-stained struggle for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Well, folks, we're back home. More than a century away from 1917, we made it back, but the past is not behind us. And so we recall the moment in history when we read the oath. In fact, we'll never forget the oath of the Negro voter. And so today we pledge ourselves to its fulfillment. And we feel emboldened by its words, which we now realize speak not merely to the past of November 1917, but also to November 2020 and to all future elections. Most of all, we pray. We pray that we will be ever mindful of the oath in both our words and in our actions. We will vote. And we will pledge, as we did in 1917, we will continue to pledge. I hereby solemnly pledge myself to join with others like-minded to myself before each election, agreeing upon a list of suitable candidates who by their records or promises seem most likely to secure good government and justice to Black folk. And I will vote for those candidates, regardless of their party, their race, or sex. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yes, if you have questions, please put them in the chat.
No, I may be able to see chat, but if you could say the question to me.
We'll read them to you. Okay.
Thank you.
This is Linda Crump, and I was going to take those questions, but I haven't seen any yet in the chat. You were amazing.
Well, thank you.
Evelyn, in the interim, would you like to say a few words about the national conferences going on now, please?
We are having the best conference, and I hope some of you register to come on. It's still, technically not too late to register. And one of the advantages of registering even now is that you can catch the plenaries. They will be available to everyone through the end of the month. But this, we had a great time in Charleston. We thought that was such a great conference. We had huge turnout. We had just great speakers. And so we worried because we had to go virtual. And there are so many groups that have had to change their plans and to go virtual. And the conference is a big fundraiser for us. And so going virtual, we feared we would absolutely not have the same crowd. But we have people on our executive council with tremendous vision. And one such person is the co-chair, Natanya Duncan. And also the other co-chair, Tara White. But really, largely, Natanya has pulled this off. We also had a generous support from Zoom. And I don't mean just monetary, I mean people who worked with us to say, this is how you can do this so people don't bomb your conference. This is how you can have chat rooms and how you can have a lounge and have fun and have multiple sessions and have great plenaries. And so with that vision, the academic program committee has done just an amazing job. I mean, we've had superstars. We've had people talk about the vote. We've had people, plenaries on COVID-19. We had last week, Reverend Barber to speak to us, just like I'm speaking to you. He is literally speaking, this is not a recording. He is literally speaking to us. We're asking questions and he's going for it. In fact, everything is live. We record live. So even now, if you decide that you would like to see that, please register. It's $70 for all members. I think for seniors, it might be a little different. I know for the students, it's lower. But it's considerably less, paying $70 than what it usually costs us when we go to the cities that we spend so much to fly, and the hotel and the food. But what you get is just amazing. It has been truly one of the most exciting conferences that we have ever had. I get letters from people all over, not only the United States, but even from people outside the United States, because now they can participate in a way they weren't able to participate when we had, you know, the regular conference. And we even have, it's really beautiful. We even have, when people speak, a text that goes at the bottom of the screen. It's very good for the hearing impaired. Now I will say sometimes they get things wrong, you know, so you'll say a word that will be misspelled. And so if you really can't hear, you might misinterpret a word, but really it is quite helpful. But we've had also these great advertisements that have been sent out that show the various people. We had Angela Davis, Ruby Seals, who else did we have? A young woman, Dewana Thompson from Woke Vote, who is just such a charismatic young woman. We had yesterday a great panel on monuments. What did we have? We've had, I've gone to every Tuesday and every Thursday and Saturday. They're every Thursday, every Saturday of the month. So tomorrow.
Reparations.
I couldn't go to that one because I'm a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and they had this 4 o'clock panel where they talked about civil injustice, and I wanted to hear that. So I couldn't go to the reparations, but because I registered, I will be able to see that recording. And so I invite all of you to invest in those recordings. They will play through the end of the month, and they'll be easily accessible. Now you have to be registered through All Academic, and that was the other real wonderful thing that Natanya Duncan did. I don't know how many of you went online to those All Academic tutorials, but she showed us how to register. There's still people though in the office who will help you to register. You have to use your your email and your regular ASALH password, and then you can see. You can even see, I think, the program now. You just can't get into it, but you can see what's on certain days. I believe that's available.
We do have a few questions, Dr. Higginbotham.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. But the first one is the journey back to 1917 was powerful. Can you explain the importance of historical imagination in the ASALH mission?
Of the historical imagination in the ASALH mission, I will say that Carter G. Woodson was emphasizing, when he founded us anyway, something a little bit different. See, in those days, he was fighting against the racist imagination that was not based on fact. And so our mission, and he would always say, we are a scientific organization. And by scientific, he didn't mean, physics, he meant social science. And so scientific meant that you didn't have all these presumptions about the past that weren't based on facts. So we have the facts now. So when I say I take you back to the past, I'm taking you back to a past that I can actually give you facts about. And that's what I tried to do with 1917.
Thank you so much for that. We do have another one. One of the participants said, would you please brief us or school us briefly about the 8-box plan voter suppression technique that you mentioned in your dialogue?
Yeah, it was so kind of complicated. I mean, I'm not real familiar about that either, except that it comes out of Louisiana, and it's a real complicated, think of a Rubik's Cube. It's anything to make it impossible for Black people to vote. And so they've got to navigate all these different kind of boxes. But even the literacy tests, if you were a PhD, you couldn't pass those literacy tests. Some of the questions were, how many bubbles are in the sea? All of these were schemes to make it impossible for Black people to vote. These weren't used on white voters. Today, the comparable would be moving the ballot, where you vote. Telling you that you don't have the middle initial of your name, and therefore this is not you, even though you got the address and everything else. There are those kind of schemes that took place. I wish I could say more on the 8-box plan. You might be able to find out on something like Wikipedia.
Would you speak a little bit about what's going on with vote by mail?
Sure.
Because I keep hearing that if you're not exact in following every single step, your vote won't be counted.
That is true. When you get a mail vote, you write your name and your address and everything. Now the question is, I know my sister is voting by mail, and we're in Massachusetts, and we've sent her form in, but she hasn't got the actual ballot. I don't know if it looks the same in every place, but I remember someone saying that you had to write your name in such a way over the envelope or the flap. But let's just say how you are registered to vote has a middle initial. So I'll use myself. I mean, sometimes I use Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham. Sometimes I just use Evelyn Higginbotham. So let's say I didn't put the Brooks in there, but that's what's on the voter registration form. That vote could be absolutely thrown out. So those are the kind of things we really need to worry about. But there are groups in specific states, because states have different ways of doing things, and you want to make sure that you're getting the right advice for your locale.
Dr. Higginbotham, the one I heard too that's really thrown people off is if there is a secret covering up for your ballot, a privacy covering, and you fail to use the privacy covering, your vote won't be counted. So I think it's critical that if we're going to vote by mail, we know the rules and we follow every single rule.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think we have that in Massachusetts. I've not heard anything like that in Massachusetts. But I'm sure that's going to be in a lot of different places, or things equally misleading like that. You know, it was interesting. The woman from Woke Vote, though, I mean, she's young and she's dealing with a younger population who doesn't feel as threatened by COVID getting out there, nor waiting, you know, for hours. Because that's the other side. Remember in Georgia a few months ago, it was the machines weren't working. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what they're going to come up with. But one of the things the woman in Woke Vote said is that a lot of Black people in the South, and she's from Alabama, she said they don't trust mail. They don't trust mail ballots. So they plan to get out there. Remember the case, wasn't it North Carolina, where I forget the year, it was the last big election, so maybe it was 2018, where, no, it was Georgia, where the person had collected the ballots and it was all dishonest, and even the man's son had to turn against him. But then when they did the vote over again, he still won. But this level of fraud.
I do see a few other things in our chat about making sure you have enough stamps on your ballot, which is critical. And for everyone who's opening their chat, you can see that some more information about the 8-box law was put up, and a link if you want to follow that. Right now, I don't have any other questions. If there's anything you'd like to say to wrap up, that'd be wonderful.
Well, Jess, it's just so great to see everybody. And I truly look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm praying that we will get through this COVID-19. The other thing I do want to emphasize to all of you, because you don't need any special registration, you don't need to pay anything. Please come to the business meeting on September 30th. This is the meeting for all of our members. We get the Zoom. There are things of importance that we need to talk about. So please join us at the business meeting. But I have been honored. Thank you again, Jim, for inviting me. Thank you. It's so great to see all the familiar faces. I love you. I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for spending this time with us. And I think all of our members that are online realize why you're such an acclaimed scholar and such an important leader for ASALH. And we look forward to continuing to support the organization in any way that we can. I'm hoping that somehow we can update the oath of the Negro voter to use it as part of our voter education campaign for this year. So perhaps we can talk about that as a branch and nationally as well. So thank you again. We usually give out a plaque, but here's a virtual plaque for you.
Virtual plaque. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Now we'll begin the business meeting. The minutes of the May 22nd, 2020 Zoom meeting were distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Marcia, I'd like to make just a slight correction to the minutes where my name is mentioned. I'd like for it to be spelled correctly. And also, since I gave the money in my mother's name, I would like for her name to be on the minutes. So I will send the correction, so I don't have to do it now. I can send it email.
Marsha, you can tell me your mother's name. I can do that now.
Okay, well, let me start with my name. It's M-A-R-S-H-A, Marsha, not Shaw, not Marshall.
Yeah, I know it's not Marshall.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Kendall-Smith. And my mother is Antoinette, much better than the Queen.
O-I-N-E-T-T-E, Antoinette.
K-I-N-D-A-L-L, Kendall.
K-E-N-D-A-L-L.
K-I-N, K-I-N.
Kindall.
L-L, Kindall.
Right. Okay.
Love you so much, Peggy.
Okay, got it.
Thank you, thank you.
Are there any other corrections or additions? If not, the minutes will be read into the record subject to the corrections that have been made. Next on the agenda is my report. What I'm going to do with my report is to combine that with the discussion of correspondence. As many of you know, Rosea has fled the coop, and as a result, I've been going to the mailbox on a regular basis and collecting it, all of the correspondence. I want to begin by thanking everyone who contributed as part of the Mighty Cause solicitation on August 28th. We raised a little over $1,000 through that solicitation. And for those of you who don't recall, that was sort of Black Philanthropy Day, and there was I think about 600 African American organizations that were soliciting funds that day, and Mighty Cause is going to be having some additional similar types of solicitations. So hopefully we will be able to participate in those as well. I wanted to provide you with an update on the status of the efforts to build a museum/cultural center in Newtown. I sit on the board of that organization, and I'm pleased to report that a temporary facility will be located at the corner of Martin Luther King and Orange Avenue, hopefully by the end of December. The building is the Reed House that's currently located in the Rosemary District.
R-E-E-D?
R-E-I-D.
R-E-I-D.
And that's a historic structure. It's because it's one of the first residences of Blacks in the Sarasota community. And that building is being relocated from there to the location in Newtown. So that building will serve as the temporary museum and cultural center while a campaign is underway to build a permanent facility. The negotiations are going on now to acquire all of the properties that would allow the permanent facility to be built adjacent to where the temporary facility is located. There'll probably be a grand opening for the temporary facility sometime in February. The next item I wanted to report on is related to the discussion that we just had with Dr. Higginbotham. The St. Pete branch of ASALH is organizing a voter caravan that's in an effort to try to promote voter registration in South St. Petersburg. And the query was made to me as to whether or not our branch would be interested in participating in something like that in Sarasota and Bradenton. If someone who's interested in helping to organize such a caravan, please email me. I plan to also pass the suggestion on to some other organizations that we could perhaps collaborate with if we decided to do that. If you're interested, I will forward some information about the St. Pete caravan that perhaps could serve as a basis for thinking about what we might do locally. One of the other initiatives that's underway is the effort to try to get the Equal Justice Initiative plaque that commemorates African Americans who were lynched in the Manatee, Sarasota area, placed somewhere in this community. Right now, the discussions are centering around the site of the temporary Newtown Cultural Center / museum. We will be asked, or we are being asked to endorse this effort. So I'm hoping that there's no opposition to doing that, and such that the board can take the action to go ahead and support that initiative. I'm going to mention now, and we'll come back to it later, seeking a co-director for the Cultural Center. I think Dr. Cheryl Smith is on the Zoom call, as well as Ernestine Campbell and Lavette Harper, so they can say more about that when we get further down the agenda. But obviously, this is a very critical institution that is closely aligned with our mission, so we need to support the efforts to make sure that that institution continues to thrive and do all the good things that it currently does. Turning to correspondence, we received a thank you note from Margaret and Ron Coleman for the expression of condolences that we sent to them. And we also sent us a letter of thanks also from the family of Lena Morel White for our condolences. And of course, Bo Bell has been very diligent in terms of reaching out to individuals and families who have experienced some sort of loss or debilitation. We've also received thank yous from Meals on Wheels Plus and Ending Hunger for the donation that we made to help them serve the needs of families during this pandemic. And finally, we received a thank you note from one of the recipients of our scholarships. Now I'll read that one to you. It says, "Dear ASALH, thank you again for awarding me the Cheryl Watkins Sneed Legacy Scholarship. I truly appreciate your generosity. You have helped lighten my financial burden, which allows me to focus on my studies. I plan to help pay it forward for more students one day as well. This is not the beginning of, this is just the beginning of my story. Sincerely, Jaylene Brown." So we know that the work that we're doing in terms of raising scholarship money is having an impact in helping to generate the next group of leaders. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? I knew I was real thorough, so I wouldn't get any. All right, next on the agenda is the Treasurer's Report. So Alan, you're on.
Alan, unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Jim's remarks from the scholarship winner fit perfectly with my treasurer's report. And we'll start with the balance sheet, which shows a cash balance of $81,650. The important item to note with that is that we are about to pay, we've actually paid $30,000 in scholarships for 25 students. So when you see the next report, that balance will be reduced by $30,000 that we used to pay for those students' scholarships. And that's the key highlight on the balance sheet. Any questions on the balance sheet? So again, our balance right now is $81,650. It will be $30,000 lower next month because we have to pay for 25 students' tuitions. And that's a good thing. The income statement, I'll just talk about the highlights of that, starting out with a revenue of $47,300. A couple of items are of note in looking at the income statement. First item to highlight is the dues of $12,270. Next item is the scholarship donation of $5,000 from Daniel Lynch. We've already heard about the donation from Marshall Kendall Smith for $2,500. And the other item of note on that page is $25,665 for the Day of Giving. So those are the major items that contributed to our balance there of $47,300 for revenue. Any questions? In terms of the expenses, our expenses here are $43,499. Main items here are $1,500 under printing for the cost of the directories. We have $1,668 for the website. We have community outreach, which includes MLK, brunch, and the funding for the food banks. And the last item there is the scholarships for $25,612. Again, just went over the highlights. Those are the major items for both the balance sheet and the income statement. Any questions on the financial statements? Okay, that's my report.
We'll read the treasurer's report into the record, subject to any corrections that prove to be necessary in the future. I did forget to read one piece of correspondence. It's very similar to the one that I read from Kaylee. And this is, Dear Manasota ASALH, I'm writing to thank you for your generous scholarship. I was very happy and appreciative to learn that I was selected as a recipient. Over the last 4 years, I have aspired to make the most of my high school experience. I have joined many clubs as well as volunteered in various settings. And it goes on and it says that there's no way that I can verbalize the impact you have on my future. And so I will say thank you so much for your contribution to my education. I look forward to pursuing my education and in the future, continuing to give back to my community. Thank you again. I can never thank you enough. Warm regards, Kaylee Cumbo. So again, we see how what we're doing is providing an incentive for students to think about how they can pay it forward and give back. So again, when we solicit funds, please be generous and allow us to continue to support our students. Next on the agenda is Second Vice President's report, Peggy. And Peggy's, I think, on the phone, so we won't be able to see it.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Jim, am I coming? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just a few highlights from membership. First off, I want to thank our member Sherry Suggs for her kind offer and assistance and her team of volunteers who delivered most of the directories to members over the summer. I did get an email from Sherry this morning that says that she has delivered all of the directories. I think she's got about 36 left, and some of those may have to be mailed. So hopefully most members at this point have now received their 2020 directory. If there are any issues with your directory, please give me a call later on today or shoot me an email. Again, it's PeggyMazel@hotmail.com. Also, I just want everyone to understand that we are trying very diligently to adhere to the national office's schedule. They are on a January through December calendar, which is what most organizations do, and that's what we're trying to move to. So rather than collecting dues in the month of September, I'm asking people, it is now time to start thinking about 2021 dues. So I'm asking members to consider renewing and to send your renewing applications and dues either directly to me or sent to the P.O. Box starting October 15th. The national office does not consider, so if anyone paid dues, say for instance in May or June, national office's expectation is that that was for 2020. If you want to be active for 2021, beginning October 15th, you need to start routing your 2021 dues directly to me or to the P.O. Box, and then all of those dues will be collected. We'll send in a spreadsheet, and those members will be considered active for 2021. And I certainly hope that all of you in attendance today and those who are not in attendance are definitely considering reactivating for 2021. At this time, I want to tell you something. I'm pretty excited about our institutional members. We now, as of today, we have 11 paid institutional members. Those institutional members are the Arts and Cultural Alliance of Sarasota, Florida, ASALH Repertory Theater, Community Foundation of Sarasota, Embracing Our Differences at Manatee Sarasota County, the New College of Florida. We have the Sarasota Art Museum, the Sarasota Opera, the University of South Florida, the Hermitage Artistic Retreat, West Coast Black Theater Troupe, and the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art. And I understand there is another institution that is in the process of considering sending in their dues. They will be placed on the 2021 list as soon as we receive their application and dues. I have re-edited the number of paid members. We have a lot of members, but the members who are paid as of today, not counting all the institutional members and the reps, is 352. That's a lower number than what we had because we had been including all of the members moving forward, but not everyone had paid their 2021 dues, so I've had to drop some names. But 352 is still a quite respectable number, and we certainly are quite pleased with that number. So that is my report for now. So, ladies and gentlemen, start paying those 2021 dues beginning October 15th. Thank you so much.
I did have one question that came in, wondering if we're going to be able to pay dues online. If not now, when?
That is Jim. Oh, where are we with the online, the website at this point?
We're still working on it. Hopefully,
Okay.
in a month or so, we should hopefully have that in place. It's a little complicated, but we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to reiterate how important it is for our members to renew their memberships. That the memberships is really our primary source of income, particularly in the wake of the pandemic when we can't have the typical types of events that have been the primary source of our scholarship funds, like Randy Rankin. So please do submit your membership renewals early. And I see there's a question in the chat about what the amount is for couples. And that it really depends.
It's 100.
Go ahead.
It's 160.
And what?
$160.
160.
160 per person?
No, for the couple.
No, per
Oh.
couple.
160 per couple, okay.
Question.
Go ahead.
Can we use the application that's in the booklet? It says 2020 on it, but can we just use that and send it to Peggy?
The new application is on the website.
Okay,
So you can just download it from there.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding membership? Thank you very much, Peggy.
Thank you.
Bo, are you on? Okay, Bo inadvertently got left off of the initial announcement, so I don't think he's on for good and welfare. But if you have any information about someone who's experiencing illness or other types of loss or is incapacitated, please pass those on. You can send them to Bo Bell or to me, and I'll pass them on to Bo.
Bo is on. He's muted.
Oh,
Bo, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
yeah, we can see you too.
Well, good morning to everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. I think it's about 73 or 78 of us, like somewhere around there. First of all, I would like to ask if, reiterate but a minute ago, if you know of anyone who is a member and has some health or some kind of concern about their family members, please let me know so I can send them either a get well card or condolence. I'd like to also report that Deborah and Don Reeves had a death in the family. They lost their mother, or Don's mother passed away. And also Wanda Gilbert's mother-in-law passed. And the only other news that I have concerning Marion Black Ruffin suffered a stroke, but she seems to be okay. There are no significant signs of any permanent damage to her as a result of the stroke. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Bo. And again, Marion is hard at work today, so we're pleased that she didn't experience any significant long-lasting implications from that medical condition. Next is the nomination committee report. Corinne, you're on.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I would like to present the ASALH officer slate for 2021 and 2022. President David Wilkins, First Vice President Gary Giscombe, Second Vice President Dorothy Green, Recording Secretary Frederick White, Corresponding Secretary Marion Ruffin, Treasurer Alan Morton, Financial Secretary Mary Jackie Davis, Members at Large Rita Smith, Robert Cantoner. Submitted by the Nomination Committee, Corinne Richardson, Constance Anderson, Irene Hill, and Lois Watson. Thank you.
According to our rules, we are required to both accept nominations from the floor and to read the slate of officers presented by the Nominations Committee twice. The election will be conducted by email since we can't meet in person. Marion and I are working on setting up the procedures to do that. Are there any questions for the Nomination Committee?
Jim?
And are there any nominations from the floor?
Jim?
Yes, Dorothy.
Would you please make that Libran Green, Corinne?
Yeah.
The Libran Green? Libran. Libron. Thank you.
That's hyphenated, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Any question, any nominations from the floor?
Jim, could you also put Marion Black Ruffin?
Done. Other feedback for the Nominations Committee? Okay, this constitutes the first official reading of the proposed slate to the body. It will be read again at the October meeting, and the election will be conducted in November. So I want to thank the Nomination Committee for its hard work. This is certainly an impressive slate. This is my favorite report, since it's a clear indication that I'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'll be free at last.
Will you accept a piece of
No, you have to sing it, Jim.
No, you don't want me to do that. You definitely don't want me to do that.
Will it be a peaceful transition?
the only possible violence is when somebody tries to back out, David. All right, thank you again, Committee Kareem. Next is the Education Committee.
Good morning, ASALH. I think I'm unmuted. Very quickly, the ASALH Academics at Booker High. This is the program that we started last year with Edna Sherrell's class at Booker High. Obviously affected like everything by the pandemic, but I'm pleased to report that we were invited to return to Booker High this year because of the pandemic and because of the demographics of our committee. We're doing this virtually, and so we have already prepared one video clip. This year we're going to be working with Edna's U.S. government class. So we've got a copy of her course outline, and we are identifying subjects along that outline that we can impact, providing an African-American perspective. We've developed one video clip already on the 2020 vote, very appropriately for her class, since that's the subject that they're touching on, and obviously that our country is focused on. We'll make that available on our website if anybody's interested, and we'll develop a number of those over the next few months. I want to thank Marion and Paul Ruffin, Ray and Fran Taylor, Jean and Linda Crump, and my wife Lois. We're all working again as a team, and always looking for new volunteers, and we will be actively recruiting. The ASALH Academics at Emma E. Booker has not been started so far this year. Obviously, in the spring last year, that got postponed, and there was some issues with accessibility. We are still committed to a program with Booker Boost at Emma E, and we'll be recruiting for volunteers for that as well. But obviously, the pandemic and the population makes that even more difficult than it always is. But we're going to keep working on that. The last thing I'd say, Jim, is, as Dr. Higginbotham said, the conference has been remarkable, and there's wonderful panels, some of which are free to the public. Jim has sent notices to the membership when there is, and usually these are the plenaries, when you can connect either through ASALH TV or even the ASALH Facebook page, and those are worthwhile viewing. So I'd encourage everybody, when you have, and it will go for, I think next week will be obviously the end of September when the conference ends. So encourage you to take advantage of those free sessions, free to the public, open to the public. And there's still time to register because there are a couple of more plenaries that I think would be well worth the investment. That's my report, Jim.
Do you want to say something about the Reconstruction course?
The Reconstruction course that we did this summer, 8 sessions and a special segment by our esteemed Dr. Morgan on medicine and science in the Reconstruction constitutes our 9th installment. Each of those are also available on our website. We had very good participation. I appreciate, again, the support from our tech team in both conducting those Zoom courses, but also then capturing them for our use in the future. So I enjoyed doing that, and certainly enjoyed the support, and we'll continue looking for ways to fulfill the mission of ASALH, which is to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information in all these various ways, even in the face of this pandemic.
David, this is Linda Crump, and the only thing I'd like to add is we were able to drop off pocket constitutions to Edna's students. She said they'll use them in class, but they'll be assigned with their names, and when they do graduate from her class, they will take their constitutions with them.
Excellent. Excellent. And those were donated by Jean and Linda Crump.
Are there any questions for David or any suggestions?
No question, but David, you were able to get into Booker or talk with the Booker students virtually. Did I understand that?
Yes, yes.
Because there have been, as you know, some other things that we would like to do from the Boulé and from the hospital. So I will reach out, I guess, to Dr. Shelley and see how we can continue to do that as we have done in the past.
Yeah, I think for us, we thought doing it virtually, Doctor, is the best approach. That'd be my recommendation to the Boulé and to anybody else. Dr. Shelley obviously is supportive of outside support, but she's also managing, like all of the other educators, this pandemic and the health of our community. So we opted to do it virtually, and we'll see how it goes, and be happy to share our experiences with anybody.
Thanks, David.
David, I would just add one thing. I physically did go into Dr. Edna Sherrill's classroom, and the space is very compromised because of this COVID. Each desk is surrounded by partitions, and so it's very hard to physically be in that space. So if you can do things virtually, I think it's better.
Yes.
Hi,
Thanks.
David, this is Michelle. I understand from the superintendent and the directions from the administration that no outside visitation or programs will be allowed this year. Everything will be done virtually. So obviously principals have an option, you know, if there's someone that they need to interview or involve, but that is the directive from the school system.
That is my understanding as well.
And I think that's correct. I think Dr. Shelley just wanted us to find a way to continue presenting this content to her kids, and we're going to do it through these video clips.
Thank you.
Jim, that's all I've got.
Thank you very much, David. Next on the agenda is old business. And there's nothing under that. So we'll move on to new business. And what I'd like to do is to provide Celeste Campbell, Lavette, and Cheryl Smith to talk about the situation at the Cultural Center. So the floor is yours.
Just popping in to say that Cheryl had to get off the Zoom a few minutes ago to go to another appointment, and she supports Mrs. Harper and Celestine Campbell.
Okay. Celestine, are you on?
I did see her earlier. I know she's.
I am on, but I would yield to Ms. Harper to go first and to give her input on this situation first, and then I will follow up.
Okay. Lavette, are you unmuted?
I think I am now. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
At the African American, oh, excuse me, there's something in the Cultural Resource Center. We now have openings for 2 chairpersons, co-chairpersons. Cheryl, who had to leave today for another appointment, will be leaving Sarasota in another month and a half to live with her daughter in New York. So her position as collections manager is now open, and my position also is coming to an end as soon as we can find someone who is committed to the type of resources and that we support here in this community. As you know, no, I don't know if you know this, but we have a video giving a virtual tour of the African American Resource Center, Cultural Resource Center. And Jim, I hope that we will be able to show that to ASALH members whenever you tell me that it is possible to do that. Maybe just after when the convention is over, or on one of the odd days that you're not meeting, so that people who are new to the community and in our can see exactly what we have here. We have over 5,000 objects, resources in the Cultural Resource Center. We have a couple of hundred, about 300 items about Newtown. And the Cultural Resource Center was the first institution in Sarasota in the beginning of the opening of this particular library, where we used to have our meetings, was the first one to have an exhibition on Newtown then and now. And then there have been several programs since that time. But the resources in the Cultural Resource Center are much broader. We support, of course, we support the idea of the Museum of Newtown history and the membership in people who live in Newtown or have lived here. We have quite a bit of information on that, so we really do support that. Our resources, of course, as I said before, are about the global Black experience. And we want to thank Dr. Higginbotham. When she visited us a few years ago, she was so impressed with all of the things that we had that upon her return to Harvard, she mailed to us the 10-volume set of African-American biographies that she and Henry Louis Gates had edited. Now, these resources, we have volunteers, we have people who will be available when the volunteer program is lifted at the library. And there's a lot more than I can tell them if they want to call me. My telephone number is in the directory. And Mrs. Campbell is president. The African American Cultural Resource Center in the library, of course, is a committee of the Friends of the Library. We are not an entity. Mrs. Campbell is president of the Friends. She can tell you about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Good morning. And thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Jim, for letting me have this opportunity to address such a prestigious audience as ASALH. I am grateful for this opportunity. We are getting ready, as of tomorrow, to have our annual retreat of the Friends of the Betty J. Johnson North Sarasota Public Library. And as Ms. Harper has just given us an update, which says that we have 2 openings, that we are very interested in having one of you to help us in filling those positions. Ms. Harper has been there in that position since before the library came. When we were meeting across the street over at the Newtown Recreation Center, trying to get all of the plans going for this library, Ms. Harper was there. And so she has the foundation of that Cultural Resource Center all intertwined within her being. So while God has blessed us to still have her with us, I would like if someone would take the reins with her so that when she decides that she can't do it anymore, not leave us, when she decides that she can't do it anymore, that someone can step right into that position to carry on. Dr. Cheryl Smith also has been a staple for the African American Cultural Resource Center. And only recently she went on to be the collections manager for the center. And that was because we have so many collections. Thank God for that. You know, the generosity of the volunteers for being able to come in and make sure that that database is in place, which has encompassed a lot of you. Thank you. I know it was because of the tugging of your shirt tails by Ms. Harper that you were volunteers. So come and continue to be volunteers at the Cultural Resource Center. But I need one of you, if you will, to shadow Ms. Harper and to get all that she has in her, because she wants to pour it into someone. She has such a wealth of knowledge inside of her that she's willing to pour it into someone that's willing to come and sit with her. So if you will, please give me an email or even Ms. Harper an email and say, I'll come and shadow you. I'd like to take on that position. My email is C as in Charlie, B as in boy, C as in Charlie, L as in Louis, E as in Edward, W as in Walter, at gmail.com. I am looking forward to my emails being overflowed with emails coming saying, that's me, that's me, that's me. I want to volunteer. I want to help. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, ASALH, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for giving me this space on the agenda. I appreciate all of you, and I thank you for the history that you are preserving and putting forth, that our youth and our adults may be encouraged to continue with the history that you are giving us. Thank you again for this opportunity, everyone.
With that type of recruitment pitch, I'm sure your emails will be flooded with other new business. Moving on to announcements. Black Muse update. I did distribute information earlier this morning, but Mickey, if you'd like to elaborate, please do.
Yes, I certainly will. Thanks, Jim. Well, changes happen, as everyone knows, because of the pandemic, but good changes. With the collaboration of 3 organizations, ASALH, Suncoast Black Arts Collaborative, and Art Center Sarasota, we are going to be presenting a virtual exhibition this year. Jim did send out this morning the flyer, the call to artists flyer, as well as the guidelines and submission procedures for artists to follow. There will be a celebration, and we'll do it in April. We'll have to create plans for that to happen. It will not be live. We will continue with our concept of the virtual exhibition. But the most exciting thing is that the virtual exhibition gives our artists an opportunity to sell their work on 3 sites, and that is important. Many artists are struggling through this period, and being able to sell their work is very important. Let me see here. Oh, so as far as the education piece goes, last year, as you recall, 4 of our artists did go into the high schools in Sarasota to speak with students, and that was extremely successful. And we've been given the okay to continue this year, but obviously it will be virtually. So because we're virtual, instead of just 12 artists being selected, we will be able to select many more. And I really hope that every ASALH member helps to distribute and forward the Call to Artists flyer. We have reached out to the full state of Florida this year. And with hope that this is going to have a greater impact and that the Manasota chapter is going to be taking a real lead in supporting the visual arts. As far as the students are concerned, we've made a commitment with the Sarasota school system that we would include the artwork from 2 students. So the school system will be conducting a juried exhibition or a juried process for those students. We are also reaching out to the Manatee school system to include them in the process, working with Realize Bradenton and the Manatee school system. The very last thing is I need at least 2 volunteers to help in recruiting and supporting conversation with the artists. So I'm in the directory, 2 members of the 350 that Peggy announced this morning. 2 people really should surface. This is such an important initiative for our organization. And as you recall, last year we received media coverage from the Herald Tribune several times, from Sarasota Magazine, from Tempo, from Scene Magazine. We had 2 beautiful coverages of our artists. And we like to continue that. We like to continue it throughout the state. So please, 2 people, please reach out, give me your support, and so we can move forward and have a great celebration and recognition of African-American artists in the state of Florida. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Hopefully you can get more than 2 people to be.
I would love more than 2. I'm just asking at least for 2.
Dan Boxer, I think you have an announcement.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that this October, it'll be about the 23rd to the 26th, and I'm saying about because the dates have not been finalized. There will be the 2nd Visions of the Black Experience Film Festival.
Virtual.
We're very excited. It will be, as Lytton says, virtual, of course.
And free.
And free. And we are hoping to get a number of films with a lot of local content. Also, we want to center a little on medicine and the student experience, but the films are not finalized. So this is sort of a vague announcement, so please forgive me, but just please be on the lookout for the emails and announcements. We're very excited about it. MHI with Dr. Merritt, Judge Williams, a number of people are involved. Dr. Hill are involved, and we're looking forward to it.
And you'll also keep us apprised about the Equal Justice Initiative.
Yes, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So I will just build a little on Jim's comments. We are sort of organizing or leading the effort, the Boxer Diversity Initiative, to bring a replica of the lynching monument for Manatee County to Sarasota and Manatee, if you will. And we obviously hope to put it in the Sarasota African American Cultural Museum. This is a very difficult process because EJI quite rightly wants a lot of support, and we have to make a very detailed proposal. And there have been 6 lynchings in Manatee. And please remember that Sarasota until 1921 was part of Manatee County. So it is a Manatee Sarasota initiative. And we have a historian by the name of Mrs. Hope Black who's doing a lot of work. And she also found records of another lynching of a Lewis Jackson, which was in the NAACP book printed in 1919 of lynchings. Now to do this, as I said before, it's called the Sarasota and Manatee Community Remembrance Project Coalition. Newtown Alive is partnering with us, and also we are having the Cultural Institute partner with us, and I think both have agreed to do so, as Jim mentioned earlier. But most important, we need supporters. We need both organizations and individuals, because to give our proposal credence, we need as wide a breadth of people as possible. And obviously our first thought is ASALH and the people in ASALH. And we know from David's lecture series this summer how important voting is, and what has happened after Reconstruction. So for the sake of ease, I will be emailing Jim the letter that needs your, we will be sending out. And I will ask Jim, I haven't said this to you before, if you'll distribute it to the members. I'd like to do it all individually, but we really want your support. We're hoping to get 500 individual supporters and at least 100 organizations. It takes about 4 to 6 months to get this done. We are not at this point asking for money. I think the total cost is approximately $15,000 to get here. St. Pete has gotten their application for a replica memorial for Pinellas County approved. And that was led by the St. Pete ASALH organization. So we all have a vested interest. Thank you.
Thank you. We will certainly do everything we can to move that project forward.
Thank you.
Doris Johnson, I think you want to make an announcement?
Yes. Good morning, ASALH members. I'm Doris Johnson, and I'm now announcing the West Coast Black Theater Troupe will be hosting its annual fundraiser, Soul in the Garden. This is going to be a socially distanced outdoor gala at Marie Selby Botanical Gardens on Friday, November 13th, 2020, from 6 to 9 p.m. Cocktails, dinner, auction, and show. Will be limited to 150 guests. There will be temperature checks and, of course, masks. And the seating will be for tables of 2 only. There will be no social gathering. We ask that you join us in a beautiful outdoor setting as we celebrate the 60s when sweet soul music was in full bloom. We're again being catered by Michael's on East. The attire is cool and comfy with groovy 1960s flair. Now, I know we are still a little timid about going out in social gatherings. So you want more distance, live stream will be available. So you will be able to see the affair the evening for $100 per household. So I wanted to, let's see, I mentioned that no one will be seated together If it's someone that you want to sit with, that's fine, but we have the entire garden, and so we'll be all over the garden that evening. So again, we ask that you join us if you so desire. If not, you can view it on live stream. Thank you.
What was the date?
It's November 13th, Friday, November 13th.
And what is the charge for going there in person?
It's $250 per person.
Any other questions for Doris?
So
Thank you very much.
Live stream is $100 per person,
Per household.
per household, okay.
Yes.
Other announcements?
Oh, I have one, Jim. This is Beverly Trueheart.
Yes.
Good morning, ASALH members. I am proud to announce that the Trenton, Greater Mercer County chapter of the ASALH, not the branch of ASALH, was chartered on September the 12th this year. And my son and a few other people were responsible for this. And he was installed by no other than Dr. Evelyn Higginbotham. I just want to make sure that you know, and he along with, his chapter, along with 7 other chapters throughout the United States, were chartered the same day. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's really significant. Over the last few years, there's been dramatic growth in the number of branches across the country. I think a few years ago, there were about 30, and now we have 48. So, and given what's happening in the political realm, I'm hoping that we'll see even more growth as communities rise up to try and make sure that the gains that we've made in our future are viable.
Beverly, I didn't get the where it was chartered.
It was chartered in Trenton, New Jersey, and it's called the Greater Trenton Mercer County branch of ASALH.
Trenton, Mercer County. Mercer County. Okay.
Branch.
Greater.
Are there other announcements?
Yes, Marcia, may I make an announcement? Well, first, I just want to thank everybody who spoke today. This was just a wonderful meeting, started by our moment in history. And second, I have to apologize to Deborah for my senior moment. And what I'd like is some feedback about the version of Lift Every Voice and Sing that I sent out to everybody, and you used it today. Can I just have some feedback about what you think about it?
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. It
was great.
Powerful.
I think so. Yeah. Powerful.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent.
I thought it was excellent. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I've listened to it several times. And now I have another question. I sent out information about Black opera, and I heard from one person that was anybody else interested? Did anybody else hear that? It was Jessie Norman celebration of her 75th birthday. It was opera singing, opera voices of the pieces that Jessie Norman had sung, and including one by Duke Ellington with an operatic voice, and the finale was Total Praise with an operatic voice. So it was great. And if you didn't see that, that's okay. There's a film coming out.
It was wonderful, and I've seen her a few times at the Metropolitan Opera, so this was really very special to have this celebration.
Marsha, I don't remember receiving that. Jessie was one of my favorite opera singers. I had the pleasure when I lived in New York of seeing her also. and I was saddened when she passed.
Oh, yes, yes.
If you send it again, please, I would love to hear it.
It's gone now. It's not on anymore, but the film is coming out and 6 opera singers will be featured in the film by Black Opera Productions. I have no idea when it'll be here, but I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Any other announcements?
I just want to give a happy hello to everybody. Please,
Oh,
Dave.
yeah, hello.
And greetings from Georgia.
Oh, it's so good to
Great
see you,
to see you.
Phyllis. Hey.
Okay, anything for the good of the order? Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation, and please stay safe, and please pass along any information that I should be sharing with the body. And we look forward to a good season and taking advantage of the opportunities that come about, even if we have to do it virtually. So
For the good of the order, please wear your mask and wear it properly. Please watch your distance. And please.
Jim, before you sign off, we had one other announcement that the Cleveland Percy visitation for tomorrow at Skyway Memorial Gardens is from 10 until 11:30 a.m.
Okay. From the
Jackie Davis has something.
Yes. I want to call to your attention from the Herald Tribune. There was an article by Karen Siedelman. I'm sure you're aware of the program that the Board of Education of Sarasota County had purchased for the racial sensitivity for the school board. There were a lot of objections to this, and people say they were pushing Black Lives Matter. Consequently, the superintendent has pulled that particular program. There was an article in the Herald Tribune on Monday or Tuesday regarding her reaction to it, and especially David, who has been presenting the racial, the Black history with the sharing it with the school board. I'd like your reaction. That was for trying to sell Black Lives Matter. It was simply a factual account of what has happened in our history that many people are not aware of if you're white.
Jackie, I'll comment quickly, and others might have a comment. We did have, our education committee had an opportunity to talk with one of the teachers about her experience. She is quite disturbed by many of her colleagues and their reactions to this, what was to be a year-long contract. And as I understand, the superintendent is reviewing apparently this, the contract and the concept, but she was most struck by the negative reaction and the ability of these teachers through their union to essentially block what most of America has been trying to do over the last few months, and that's to learn and to expand their understanding of our history and its racist legacy. So I think the recommendation from our friend was if Sarasota, Manatee citizens, Bradenton citizens would send letters to the superintendent expressing concern, and Carrie Seidman's article, I think, laid this out very well, letting the school, the superintendent and the board know that we think this is important. These are she was most concerned because so many of her students have talked to her over time about the racism they experience in their classrooms. And so that these teachers could presume to be above the need for this sort of education was simply devastating to her. This is an active teacher in the high school, and she's just appalled both by the reactions from her so-called colleagues and friends, and that the leadership of the school district would not be more assertive on which is essentially teacher education.
David, since you've had those discussions, can you draft a letter that we can send as an organization to the superintendent?
I can do that, Jim, yes.
And we'll handle it through the executive board. So since we want to get it out as soon as possible.
Okay. Bob Catno has, and then
yeah, David, could you also send us some information on where we could send letters and stuff like that? I mean, I think that would
also the background. Is there an article that can be we can find online? And
yeah.
I'm not aware of this. I think not only letters from individuals, but I think as a group, I think it's a good idea that as our organization, the largest organization, the chapter in Sarasota itself, this is disgusting. What's going on in the school system.
And
it needs to be addressed firmly.
David?
May I make a comment?
David, I have 2 books from the Southern Poverty Law Center on teaching tolerance. I can send them to you.
Thank you. We've used teaching tolerance in our slate. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I also would like to jump in. I read those articles about this training that was given, and the way I understood, and maybe David or somebody else has an update. I heard your update, which was helpful, David. But as I read it, what I understood was that a very few white teachers objected to the subject matter. And the trainer from California who does diversity and inclusion, equity and access training for a living, when interviewed by Carrie, said that the kind of reaction a few teachers gave, which changed the course of the training and ended the training temporarily, I think, is the kind of reaction that happens anytime you do diversity and inclusion training. In other words, white folks and some Black folks too, or people of color, but primarily there will be 1 or 2 white people who are very uncomfortable with conversations about race and feeling like it's personal to them and that they are responsible for racism. And that's just a natural part of the process of going through this kind of training. And what we have to hold space for these folks, but also hold space for all the other folks in the room who are ready to engage in these conversations and figure out how to move everybody along rather than stopping the process altogether. So I think that's an important point to point out, that this is what happens. This is what happens when you do this kind of training. It's not unusual. It's actually something you should expect.
And then to complicate matters, I read it also, and to complicate everything is because it's a new superintendent. And so here's this new person coming in, and then the people who oppose immediately got to him. And so he's trying to have a smooth beginning, and that made it even worse. But I'm finished.
I think that we have to keep in mind the young people, the students, and yes, the history of segregated schools, and now we have integrated schools that have many racial problems in this region, I guess, in the South.
All over the
country.
All
In
over.
the country. Well, it needs to be addressed for Sarasota so that we don't lose our students. They lose them mentally and with their energy for education. They can be turned off, and so, unfortunately, I've taught in situations where I've observed and we have to be anti-racist. And these people, the teachers who were objecting, yes, I understand that happens, but in the meantime, the victims are the children, the students both white and black, but I'm especially thinking about the black students who don't have white privilege to get them through their education. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get this cleared up without a lot of confrontation. But letters are good. An acknowledgement of that we're aware of what happened and not happy about it. But is there some action?
Yes, that is what I would like to ask. Can ASALH send a letter representing our views?
That's what I just said, that they asked David to prepare one so we could send it.
Oh, very good. I think that is exactly what should be done.
Okay.
Ray Taylor.
One of the things this shows is that these people who objected are the ones in the greatest need of some sensitivity training. Otherwise, why would they object so strenuously?
Yes.
Being explained to students. There's rejection of the idea that slavery ever existed in this country. They object to the idea that there's still discrimination and prejudice in the country. And they're probably, and I'm assuming, some of the greatest holders of that feeling. So anyway, and with our current political situation, I imagine it's a little more sensitive to them.
Jim, if you send a letter, if you could send it to us through an email, and then we can kind of paraphrase it ourselves. You know, it would be maybe a little easier that way.
That's a great idea, Bob.
For all of us.
And also we could get signatures from ASALH members so that the letter can show how many people
we could do that
in our organization.
Ray Taylor is trying to comment. Ray?
Yes. Jim, is there a way, and I'm probably being naive on this, to have a broader outreach to felons that have served their commitment? I understand that there are many people who are willing to even give money to help them. Is there a way for us to reach out in a broader way to get these people to come in so we can actually accomplish something on getting felons the right, felons who have served their terms, the right?
Yes, the Sarasota NAACP has been working on this for a few years. So I think that if you would contact the president of the Sarasota NAACP, you can find out what is taking place here. Yes, we're very active.
Well, I'll also say this. If you listen to the news last night, our new Attorney General, State Attorney General, is pursuing the idea that someone else paying money to pay the fees that these felons own should be unlawful. So they're trying to find some way to prevent the money that Bloomberg and John Legend and those others are collecting to help the felons pay cannot be applied because it's not coming from the felons. So they're trying to
but contributions can be made to the felons. There is a lot. It's not a simple matter, but you can find out exactly.
Yeah, I did send out an email with some of that information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we will certainly follow up on the issue with the school system, and if anyone is interested in taking leadership and trying to organize a caravan similar to what they're doing in St. Petersburg to promote voter registration, please let me know. And again, everybody, please be safe and let's stay in touch. So thank you all for all you do for ASALH. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Great meeting.